I remember dating a girl and she had really sensitive skin. And so when I would kiss her and I was a little stubbly, like I'd be on the weekend, she would get like a little redness. And she would be like, "Oh, yeah, your beard is prickly." And it really brought out something defensive in me. Like, needless to say, that relationship didn't work out. The next woman I dated had the exact same issue, but she was a genius because I would shave, and she'd be like, "Oh God, you're like so sexy when you're clean shaven."
So I have absolutely nothing against the people in that podcast and what they were talking about. I think that it is somewhat accurate. However, I do want to take this as an opportunity to highlight the fact that these are the kinds of things that women are talking about a lot of the time when they say that there is an inherent invisible labor that comes with being in romantic relationships with men. For most men, in order to be deemed a good partner, you have to be someone that is capable of abandoning yourself to an extent. If you have a problem with the way your male partner behaves, they expect that you do not voice your concerns, or if you are going to voice your concerns, you have to find a palatable way to voice it to them. I find this particularly interesting because there is a narrative out there that men are these logical, non-emotional beings. However, when we assess relationships between men and women, especially on a romantic level, women's role is largely dependent on them knowing how to tiptoe around their man and not, triggering them emotionally. Although I do not think that this is an inherently wrong concept, it is good if you are in a healthy relationship to learn the emotional needs of your partner and communicate accordingly. Where this concept goes wrong is the fact that a lot of men refuse to acknowledge the fact that women are always somehow engaged in a form of labor when interacting with men. We see this a lot when it comes to women who are stay-at-home wives, stay-at-home moms. People fail to acknowledge the fact that these women are always performing some sort of labor in the background in order to help the men show up the way that they do in society. And perhaps it's this perception that women are supposed to thrive and in fact be happy in roles of servitude that stops people from acknowledging the fact that small aspects like this are indeed labor. This is something that goes on for years a lot of the time, having to tiptoe around someone's emotional feeling, having to be logical before speaking to a person. That takes a lot of work and a lot of self-sacrifice, and these aspects are aspects that often go disregarded and unacknowledged by the men that these women are partnered with, and sometimes even by society at large. And it is actually so interesting because this concept of a woman's labor going unnoticed does not occur only in this specific area. There are so many things that happen in society to where women are expected to just be a certain kind of way. However, the labor that goes into being that kind of way is never acknowledged. Things like a woman is expected to do majority of the cooking in the household. A woman is expected to do majority of the child rearing. A woman is expected to know where everything in the house is. And women just fall into these roles, and, society just expects women to be these roles without acknowledging the amount of labor and self-sacrifice and self-abandonment that can sometimes go into a woman falling into these roles. And I want to make it clear that there is nothing wrong if you are a woman who enjoys doing these services for your man or for the people that you love. However, what is important is for you to recognize the fact that you are doing a service. You are being of service whenever you decide to coddle a man's emotions, stroke his ego, make sure there's food on the table for him, make sure you remember everything that's going on in the household. It's not something that you ought to be doing because you are a woman. It is actually something that you are doing from the goodness of your heart. And just because you enjoy it doesn't take away from the fact that it is a labor. If you love your job, that doesn't take away from the fact that you are working there, and your contribution has to be acknowledged regardless of the fact that you enjoy it, right? And I think it's so important for women to acknowledge the fact that these are laborious acts that we are doing, even if we enjoy them, because failure to acknowledge this encourages society around us and even the men in our lives to not see these specific aspects as contributions of value that we are bringing into their lives. And this is why we find that a lot of stay-at-home moms and stay-at-home wives find themselves in a sticky situations where they have to prove their contributions into the lives of the man that they have spent years doing these tasks for, because it goes by as an invisible labor, as something that women simply do not get credit for. So yeah, I just thought this conversation was so interesting because a lot of men will watch the clip that I attached in the beginning of this video and will proudly admit that, yeah, this man is right. You know, women have to learn how to communicate to us. You're not going to get anything from us if you're just emotional and illogical. However, those will be the same kind of men that are going to not acknowledge the fact that a woman dealing with a man is inherently performing some form of labor in order to allow that relationship to go about seamlessly. And I find that dynamic very ironic, and I just wanted to touch on it. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Do let me know in the comment section down below if you have any areas where you have noticed that women perform invisible labor that goes unnoticed, uncredited, and sometimes forgotten. Also, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate knowing that there are people that are listening to these conversations and that are even interested in these conversations, because I really enjoy making these think pieces and I really want to keep on making them, okay? So thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.